A few years ago, a wave of hyperlocal news outlets flourished, then floundered. But a new generation is here, and here to stay. In the following session, Billy Penn founder and CEO Jim Brady, along with Tarek Attia and Judy Kust, share their best lessons and worst mistakes.
My name is Marie Gilot, and I work for Knight Foundation, which is a foundation that makes grants to journalism projects in America. And some of these projects have been hyperlocal and local. And so today, this is what we're going to talk about. And as Matt mentioned, hyperlocal, the comeback, well, it's not that it really went away. It's just that maybe now we're doing it better. So first we have Julie Kust. She is Director of Paid-for Digital Services for Le Parisien. And she just launched a hyperlocal digital product that is by a subscription called Ma Ville, or My City. Next, we have Tarek Attia. He's the publisher of Mentikti, which is a local newspaper in Egypt covering downtown Cairo. It's a print product. And Jim Brady is the CEO and founder of Billy Penn in Philadelphia, which is a local news site. And he's going to get us started with a presentation.
I want to focus, though, on the key thing for me, which is, with Billy Penn, is about how to be small. I've spent a lot of years at the Washington Post and at places like AOL, where there were an awful lot of big companies. And what I've learned from big companies is that being big sometimes is just as much of a disadvantage as it is an advantage, and being small can be the opposite. So if you want to know what it is real quick, we designed the site to be displayed on mobile. It's really focused on millennials. We're trying to deliver them news via a curated model, original reporting supplemented by other interesting content from around the area. We have a staff of 6, very much committed to civic engagement and making the city a better city. We talk more about how later, and maybe most importantly from a business perspective, focused on events as a primary model and not on display. For a lot of years of my career, as I said, the one holding the shield, and now I got the rock, and trying to figure out how to deal with larger companies around us all over the place in Philly. And so I thought, instead of going into a deep dive on the specifics of Billy Penn, because we can do that in any kind of Q&A, I wanted to touch on the key takeaways for me about local and being small, which are, first of all, you have to stay positive. I mean, I know it's a cliche, but a lot of times looking around at companies that are bigger than you is frustrating, but you're not small, you're fast, right? I mean, there's ways to, your competitors are not actually big, they're too big. And every positive is a negative, and every negative is a positive. And you have to look at everything through that prism. If you're sitting there saying, well, the Philadelphia Inquirer or whoever it is has 300 people on their newsroom staff and you have 4, instead of talking about what you can't do because they have so many people, think about what they can't do because they have so many people. And that speed is actually quite a lovely thing to have. And when you have a newsroom of 4, there is no red tape. And I have 7 quick tactics I'll run through here. For us, it's don't chase every story everybody else is chasing. I have a newsroom of 4. If I try to be a comprehensive source via my own staff, they're all going to quit in 2 minutes because they're going to have to write 80 stories a day, and they probably won't be very good. If you're going to curate, if your idea is you're going to link to the best, you don't have to be at every press conference. You don't have to be at everything going on in the city. You can trust good news organizations in your town and link to them. Number 2 is, as I said, use curation to provide that comprehensive. 50-60% of the things they've clicked on are actually not ours. They're things that we've just connected them to because we think it'll be of interest to them. So they perceive the site to be fuller and larger and better staffed than it is because they get a good experience, they go out, they leave. For us, the example of this was the Amtrak derailment, which was a big story in Philadelphia, where we became sort of the go-to place for a lot of Philly news consumers because we weren't playing favorites. Good story is a good story, whether it's written by the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Associated Press, an organization not in Philly at all. Tactic 3, don't get too tied to the routine daily stories. We actually have a metric we track every day on the site, which is what percentage of our page views came from stories we wrote before today. Like, what's the long tail? Stories 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, last week, 4 months ago. And most days we're running between 50 and 60%. We think about the long tail every time we write a story. How long will this story be relevant? And if we think the answer is 6 hours, we'll probably will not do it. Tactic 4, but when the new huge story happens in your backyard, you better own it. Because if a really big story happens, that kind of once or twice a year kind of story, you can't sit that one out. That's when you got to take your entire reporting staff and throw them at it. And we did in this case, and that was the Amtrak crash, where we took our entire staff of 4, plus a few interns, plus me, because even though I'm not technically in the newsroom, I've been in newsrooms for 25 years, and we basically just threw everybody at this story for a week. And the interesting thing is, the 6 or 7 full-time equivalents that we threw at this story are not that much fewer than what the big places in town were able to throw at it. So you can actually be pretty competitive on a huge story, even if you're not that big, because you don't have all these other things you have to support. Tactic 5, partner with anyone and everyone to get exposure. We've done partnerships where we've got nothing but our branding on television. Yeah, we'd love to get some traffic, but at the end of the day, we just want to be known. 6, stop listening to people who tell you what local can't do, because that's always, local doesn't scale, local doesn't do this, wah, 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 local doesn't do, What local does do is means your consumers are all within your reach physically, and national sites don't have that luxury, and so focus on doing things like events. Per my mention earlier, we've done about 20, 30 events at this point, 5 of them really significant, some of them just happy hours for people to come get to know us. But the fact that your user base is all in your backyard is a huge advantage, and I don't think enough local sites take advantage of that. And then the last one is don't be afraid to do things that sound crazy at first. So 2 things we did. One, we did emojis for every one of the mayoral candidates in Philadelphia, and it's like, oh, come on, that's so ridiculous, so childish, doing emojis of serious politicians. Well, in our office now we have hanging a signed emoji. Every one of the mayoral candidates signed theirs, and a few of them now have them in their office because they love them, and it was a way for us to get noticed by them in a very big market very quickly. And so maybe it was silly, but you know what? They know who Billy Penn is now. Billy Penn, by the way, is named after the statue at the top of City Hall, which is what this statue is. And we decided that we're going to do Flat Billy this summer and have Philadelphians around the world bring Billy with them, like to Barcelona. And then it's La Sagrada Familia Billy photobombed yesterday. And again, silly? Yeah, maybe. But the bottom line is we've already had people posting photos of them with their little flat billies somewhere. And so I think what we're trying to bring to all of this is a little bit of a sense that we're able to have fun too. So here's where we are 8 months into this adventure at all, and we're reaching millennials like we want to. And we're very active on Twitter. And we actually launched our Twitter feed and our Facebook feed before we actually launched the site, and our newsletter for that matter. So, and then on the business side, we've actually sold, we're doing, all our large events have been sponsored, and we actually just made our first couple of sales, which are ad events combos, where half the value in the deal goes to an event that we throw and half the value goes to advertising on the site. So so far we're very happy with where we are, and glad to talk a little bit more about it when we get to the panel portion of this.
So one thing that you didn't say in there, but you say often, is passions, not page views. Going to be a question for Tarek. Like, how do you do it? How do you create this relationship with the audience?
So the newspaper is called Mantiqti, and that means my neighborhood in Arabic. And from the title, immediately, that was the goal that we had, that people would feel a strong connection to the newspaper. And maybe it bears explaining also that we purposely chose to produce a print product, even though our whole team is very aware of the huge disruption of digital to the landscape, not only around the world but in Egypt. We opted to make it a free high quality newspaper. It's 24 pages. It's full color. And people are getting stuff thrown at them all the time in the street, little flyers and free magazines and all that kind of stuff. But one of the reasons why they might keep a publication like ours is because we provide really high quality information. So, for instance, if any of you have been to Cairo, there's a giant building in the middle of Tahrir Square called the Mugamma. And it's where all the government services are. There's hundreds of places where you need to go to get your passport stamped or change your kid's school district or something like that. And we put it in this kind of very easy to use infograph form. And we were kind of amazed that a couple of months later we heard that the employees at the information desk at this building, where thousands of people come in every day, were so happy with this that they blew it up onto a poster size, and they framed it, and they put it, and it became the information map to the whole building.
Helping people go about their days, basically, with useful information. Julie, how do you do this when your product is highly automated because you have to serve 3,000 towns? How do you create this relationship?
It's not automated, it's journalist content. So we have, the product is called Le Parisien, ma ville, my town, and it's made by an editorial team of 130 journalists. So it's not, it's really editorial content. The audience is choosing the town around Paris that they want to know information about. We have fresh news of, I would say, the main 300, 400 towns around Paris every day, but we are still want to build something with the community we have in. The problem is we have a big community. And right now we're working on a new version of the app, which will have something called Share, and we will ask the people to share their stories. They've already started. We already got some videos that people wanted to share with us, and we want really to exploit that a lot further.
The information that they get is for their town, the towns around them, and the nearest Paris arrondissement or district. Because you figured out this is how they live in those areas, it's not just your town, it's really a zone of life around.
We call it like the life area, and we did some studies before building this app, and we found out that really what's important for the people is more the town they live in, even more than the one they walk in. And this is what we do automatically. We just made these little areas for each of the towns. So for the 3,000, we made it manually, and now it's automatically done.
So let's talk about money, because when we talk about local and hyperlocal, everybody always wants to know about money.
For us, it's native advertising, display as a secondary, and then events as a primary. And so we just hired a events and salesperson who started about a month ago, and we're having an event next week on the main square in Philadelphia with a sponsor, the energy company in town. And what we're finding is that we haven't had a single advertiser yet when we say we want to offer you some kind of combination events advertising thing. Nobody has said no to that. They always want to know what that means. So we're going to keep pushing that particular piece of it pretty hard, to the point where we may have two major events a month and 10 smaller ones. An example is we had an event at the top floor of the Comcast Center in Philly, and Comcast is the big player in Philadelphia. We had an event at the top of the Comcast Center, which was about how to keep technology talent in Philadelphia. It was a 2-hour event. The panel was about a half hour of that, and the rest of it was really networking. And after the panel, we actually asked anybody in the audience if they had a job opening or were looking for a job, they could get up and say, this is what I do. And so it was almost like a verbal job fair. And that went really well, but I think it's because we kept the programming in it to a minimal amount.
Because we don't have a tradition really of these kind of smaller community newspapers in Cairo, local advertisers finally found a place to inform their communities of their businesses. In our business planning, however, it's clear to us that one neighborhood is not going to be able to really sustain the business. So in our conversation with national advertisers, we discovered that they were interested in having their presence be in multiple neighborhoods at the same time. So over the next 2 years, we plan to open 4 more of these Montiktis in 4 other neighborhoods in Cairo, and we've had pretty clear commitments from the large national advertisers that they will take on, sort of year-long contracts and things like that. And we're also planning on doing all kinds of festivals in each neighborhood under the Montikti brand, like a shopping festival, a food festival, a literary festival, all of these things, because again, it's about building the community, just like Jim said.
We have a subscription-based model, so the idea is to have a metered paywall, and the people can read 5 articles per week, and then they get to pay 2.99 euros per month, which is very low, because we thought we wanted people to start paying. It's really a premium model because the information we have in it is very exclusive. We are the biggest newsroom for local information in Paris. So we're trying. We'll see if it works, but the first results are quite impressive.
Can you share an idea that you tried that sounded like a good idea and that failed, and maybe what you learned from it?
We tried, at the beginning, we had an idea which was to do something a little more complicated. The app had a lot of features into it, and we were thinking about a model where the people could either do some gamification, but complicated things within the application, or pay. And we found out, doing some of the studies we did, that the people wanted something very simple and that they wanted to go very quickly to the content. And it's true that we had some very fancy ideas at the beginning, and at the end, we did an app which is very simple. You choose the town, you get the local information, you get the local services. You can share, but that's it.
Okay, so one thing we tried to do, which is I think what a lot of publishers used to do, and we thought, okay, so it's a print product, so we'll go for that same approach, which was to sort of put a thing at the back page that says, we want to learn more about you as a reader. Can you please send us your name and address? Because we were trying to build a database, but the turnout for that wasn't that great actually, and that got us thinking, okay, this kind of collection of data about our readers is going to work better when we go to our digital platform, which we're planning to do, and our plan is not to just release the content on digital. We actually want to make it a very personalized experience for people, maybe a lot like what Julie is talking about. And in that way, we will know a lot about our readers. And that probably makes more sense in this day and age. I don't think people are filling out forms anymore, so we're probably not going to do that anymore, the form thing.
And at the beginning of it, we thought if we're going to be really intense for 5 days and really try to do this, we need to relax on the weekends. I can't kill the staff the first 6 months of the site. So we kind of did a lot of scheduled social stuff. We'll put 2 or 3 things up over the weekend on Facebook and on Twitter, and that'll be enough. And it was just the audiences, as always, is so much smarter than you give them credit for. Like they could tell that there was no human at the helm on the weekends, and the traffic just plummeted off. And we started staffing the weekends a couple of months ago and have seen the traffic shoot up on weekends now because it's obvious that there's somebody there actually keeping things more updated. And so trying to sneak a fastball past the audience on that one was probably not wise, and we've learned from it.
So let's look at what's next. And is there maybe either a general trend or a new piece of technology that you feel excited about that you think will benefit your business?
Streaming is interesting for us, certainly. I mean, we'd like to be able to stream more stuff for the panel that was here yesterday. I think the one that's been really helpful to us, I would say, is actually a back office one, which has been Slack. Without Slack, I mean, we have people spread out all over the city, and I'm traveling a lot, but I mean, the ability to stay in touch all day long via Slack, you feel like you're in the same space all the time. And you can share, it's like you can all share all these different channels, and so we have one for strategy, one for product, one for editorial, and you can just share links, you can share pictures, you can share anything basically in there with the whole staff with one click instead of getting stuck in email all day long.
And it's highly searchable, so you don't lose anything, and you can go back, you can put some attachments, and it's actually in the US widely used by journalists.
I think the future that we're looking at in all of these cases is this sort of retro kind of returning back to the older function of journalism, which is to let people know what's going on around them. We were able to attract some of the best editors and photographers and designers from the national press. So these are people who have already, had a huge national audience and things like that, and they didn't mind stepping back, so to speak, and going back to the sort of smaller local coverage where you kind of have an immediate connection with your audience. You meet your sources as you're coming in and out of the office every day. It can be compared kind of to the slow food movement in the food industry, where because of the total immersion you have in digital and this sort of maybe impersonal, even though it's very social, it's sort of impersonal, that people might be in our industry moving back to the idea of very personalized local journalism.
I really think that we can do a lot of things with data and all the technology that's coming around that, and data visualization is key for us. For example, we are thinking about doing some articles on do I pay my rent too much? And you can get an article with the data of, rent can be an issue around Paris, and it's very expensive to buy or to rent. So it can be something where you can really mix a large issue with a really, really local, and have the price of the neighborhood you're in, or even the building. So I think all the data, even the automation things we saw earlier in the day, would be something interesting for us.
We say all the time the most complicated technology we deal with every day is the human brain. So in trying to build loyalty and trying to get people to really enjoy your brand is actually much harder than finding technology that can do what we do.
Jim, you're talking about native advertising, but first describe what it is and how you think you're going to make it work.
Well, I mean, it's basically it's like a story that's written by an advertiser, essentially. It's not, I mean, we could spend all day debating the difference between the word advertorial and native advertising, but basically it's content produced usually by the advertiser, sometimes in concert with the content company, but it's basically often a little indirect. It's not necessarily saying this brand is a great brand. It writes something related to that brand. So the energy company might write 8 ways to stay cool this summer, and it's written by an advertiser. And we just insert it in the stream. We don't have a traditional homepage. We just have a stream. It's reverse chronologically published, and our native advertising is in, I think, the 4th and 8th and 12th slots. It's set off with a yellow banner and labeled Brandland, and it's just basically our way to get advertising into that stream.
And the idea is that people don't look at ads, don't click on banners or on display ads, but they read content. But it is tagged that it is paid by the advertiser. To finish up, I thought, well, you guys are doing very different work, but in the same kind of field, and you come from different parts of the world, and maybe you have questions for one another. Maybe you're curious about something.
Tarek, do you think about going digital, or do you want only to stay on paper?
No, we're definitely thinking about going digital, and the idea currently is not to make this material available on a website, not to just dump it on a website, because, like I said, we want people to actually be attracted to the print product and to make an effort to go and pick it up and to develop this relationship. What we do, though, because there's news obviously breaking all the time, so we actually break that news on our Facebook page, and we have about 9,000 people on that page right now. When we do go digital, we're going to definitely be hopefully at an advantage, because we'll have seen all of these experiments that have been going on for the last 5 or 10 years.
And on that note, we're running out of time. I want to thank the panel and you guys for sticking around, and just enjoy the rest of the night's activities. Thank you.